If you're a fan of old school bodybuilding, then make sure to check out Sups the Movie. Filmmaker Alex Ardenti explores the $40 billion sports supplement industry, delving into the origins, evolution, and current state of supplements used by millions of fitness enthusiasts worldwide, available at Amazon and Vimeo.
Hi everybody, Golden Era Bookham here, and today we continue with the series of interviews with Jerry Brainum. And in this video, Jerry and I discuss the optimal amount of protein that is ideal for muscle protein synthesis. There are many diets out there, some advocating eating minimal amounts of protein, whilst others, such as Rio H. Blair and Vince Gironda, would at times advocate huge amounts of protein, and these different views are discussed, referencing recent scientific reports.
Yeah. So you've talked about these two methods that you used as a natural. What about nutrition then to get really big?
Okay, I've always been a big believer in high protein diets. That goes way back. In fact, I remember the first bodybuilder I ever met. I don't know if I told you the story. A guy named Ray. I met him when I was at a summer camp. I was 11 years old, and I was interested in exercise. I was a swimmer, but I was interested in getting involved in some sort of weight training. Even though back then the idea was that weight training made you what they called muscle bound.
Muscle bound.
It was actually discouraged for any type of athletic activity. That's how backwards it was back then. But anyway, this guy was a cook at the camp, and he used to walk around with his shirt off because it was hot up there. It was in the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania. And I looked at this guy. He was actually very muscular. I never saw his legs because he always wore pants, but he'd walk around with his shirt off during the day. And I noticed his muscles. And I said, he reminded me of the guys I saw in the comic books, like Superman and Batman. He had the deltoid, the pronounced delts. I'd never seen that. Most average guys don't have deltoids that protrude. Yeah. This guy had it, and I admired that. So I said to him, I remember the first question I asked him, how do you get muscles like you? And I remember what he told me after all these years: eat a lot of protein. That's the first, and he walked away. That was his advice: eat a lot of protein. And I took it to heart, and I never forgot that. And that my whole bodybuilding career, I always emphasized protein. Today, they know that after many years of study, they know that the ideal amount of protein to promote muscle hypertrophy or growth is to ingest 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight, with the latter one, 2.2 grams, roughly equaling 1 gram per pound of body weight. And exactly. That's what I always shot for. When no matter what type of, whether I was bulking up or cutting down for a contest, I always aimed to get 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So let's say I wanted to weigh 210 for a contest, I would consume 210 grams of protein. I always did that. That was my system. And if I was bulking up, I'd actually eat a little more protein than my weight. I would go up to 300 grams of protein. Yeah. Which I admit is excessive, but I didn't know that back then.
On that note, reading The Wild Physique and many of other Vince's booklets and whatever his information that he wrote over the years, he actually wrote once that in some special cases, one should even eat up to 5, 6, 7, even up to 10 grams per pound of 10 grams of protein per pound of body weight. What do you take of that? I mean, there are some studies that have initially a long time ago, some studies were saying 20 to 30 grams per meal maximum, but then others were showing you could almost assimilate as much as you ate if you could digest it. It's like 70 grams in a meal could easily be digested. So, I mean, the science is a bit sketchy there, and it's kind of starting to catch up to what Vince was saying. So what's your take on that?
Okay, they did. There was a saying for years, among, an adage, if you want to call it, that your body couldn't assimilate more than 30 grams of protein per meal. Exactly. And I was in the hospital once for one of my asthma attacks, and I was walking through the hall with this IV, on a pole. I was, taking a walk, and I ran into it was a university hospital I was in, and I ran into what they call a pharmacy intern. It was this young guy studying to be a pharmacist. We got into a discussion of nutrition, and he suddenly said to me, you can't digest more than 30 grams of protein per meal. And I said, where do you get that from? He said, oh, it's a fact. It's a fact. It's well known. I said, could you give me a reference Where did you find that? And then he says, I know it, and he's arguing with me, and this guy didn't even work out. And I said to him, that I know from my experience, I don't think you're correct. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a $10,000 bet that you're wrong. If you could prove it, show me a reference, authoritative reference, like a medical journal or some specialist, proving that you can't use more than 30 grams of protein per meal, you win the bet. Now, I never saw the guy again because I got out of the hospital. But the funny thing is, I would have lost, because later on they showed through a number of studies, the first initial studies involved young bodybuilders. They tested various amounts of protein per meal, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 grams. And they found that any more than 20 grams of protein per meal didn't increase muscle protein synthesis. In fact, they went so far as to say, if you take too much protein, you wouldn't get fat now if you're active. That's another big error I see made a lot by even registered dietitians. They're always telling people if you eat too much protein, because it has 4 calories per gram, you can get fat. All I can tell you is in my almost 60 years of training, I've never encountered one person, male or female, who ever got fat eating protein. And the reason is simple. In active people, excess protein is oxidized. It's degraded in the liver. The nitrogen portion is converted to urea. It's excreted out, and the rest of it is basically oxidized. It's just burnt up in the liver. So you don't get fat. But the point, getting back to the study, in these young bodybuilders, they showed that, again, 20 grams was maximum for muscle protein synthesis. Now, a lot of people interpreted that as, well, it's true then, you can't digest more than 20 grams of protein a meal. That was wrong. Because the truth is, and this is getting back to what Vince is advocating, there's no limit on how much protein you can use. If you ate 100 grams of protein per meal, you'd digest all of it. But only a tiny percentage of it would be used for muscle protein synthesis, and that's what you're after when it comes to muscle growth. They did a study where they had a group of men. I don't remember whether they were bodybuilders or not. They gave them a steak that contained 95 grams of protein, and they gave them another steak, a smaller steak, that only contained 30 grams of protein. Now, what they found at the end of the study was the muscle protein synthesis was the same between 30 and 95. In other words, the 30 grams was about the right amount, to maximum muscle protein. The 95 grams was excessive. It didn't cause any problems. They didn't get any fat from it or anything. But in other words, it made no difference. It tops off. Now, later studies showed that that if you're older, let's say over 40, you have something called anabolic resistance occurs, where it's a little bit more difficult to get the amino acids into muscle. There's various reasons for it. It's more common in people that don't lift weights, but it does still happen sometimes to a lesser extent, even if you lift weights, meaning that you don't have a full degree of anabolic resistance like a sedentary person would. In that case, it involves insulin resistance, low nitric oxide production, blah, blah. I don't want to get into that. It takes too long. But the point being that when you get older, it's harder to get that amino acids. So what that means is you do have to get a little bit more protein. So to upgrade it, if you're over 40, you can take in as many as 40 to 50 grams per meal of protein and get maximum protein. So you need more than your 25-year-old counterpart to get the same degree of muscle protein synthesis. Now, getting back to Vince, as much I loved Vince, you know that I'm a big admirer. He taught me so much. I would never say anything bad about him, but unfortunately, I in the course of my work, I've read many, many studies over the years, especially related to protein metabolism. And unfortunately, this idea of getting, 10 grams per pound of body weight was excessive. In other words, there's no human on earth that could use that much protein for muscle protein synthesis. Again, when talking about muscle growth, we're talking muscle protein synthesis. And you could digest that much protein, but most of it will not be used for muscle protein synthesis. It'll be degraded in the liver.
So that was Jerry Brainum on the optimal amount of protein athletes should consume for optimal protein synthesis. and his opinion being based on a study published in 2018 in the Journal of International Society of Sports Nutrition, where Schoenfeld and Aragon demonstrated that the human body can only use around 20 grams of protein per meal for muscle building, and this corresponds to a maximum protein intake of about 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day for maximum anabolism, or around 1 gram per pound of body weight. Now, Vince Gironda was known to recommend up to 10 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight for bodybuilders undergoing extreme training. Although science agrees that although such a large amount of protein can be digested and therefore increase amino acid levels in the bloodstream available for protein synthesis, not all of it will participate in muscle protein synthesis. In a study published in 2016 in the American Journal of Physiology, Endocrinology, and Metabolism, Kim and colleagues demonstrated that there was no difference in muscle protein synthesis in athletes that ate a moderate 40 grams of protein per meal versus those that ate high protein meals containing up to 70 grams. However, the authors do agree that an important point that was not discussed by Jerry and I. The authors did demonstrate that individuals of the high protein group had greater whole body protein synthesis, which is likely to reflect increases in gut tissue protein synthesis. And this is really important. Before you all start screaming, "Oh, I don't want to get a bubble gut," the authors argue that proteins retained in the gut could be beneficial as they can be released into the blood circulation and used for muscle protein synthesis during the overnight fasting state. Could this mean then that Vince Gironda actually had a point? Was he right? Can you actually ingest more protein than what is recommended, and then perhaps this protein may help muscle protein synthesis occur when you're in a fasted state, when you're sleeping, for example? I mean, there is a point there that could be, I guess, discussed further. And the authors have further shown in another study that whole protein body synthesis increases linearly with increasing dietary protein. And the greatest limitation of many of these protein synthesis studies is that muscle protein synthesis is usually only measured for a short time and not over several days. Science, of course, will have to conduct further research to find out whether muscle protein synthesis can still be increased over the long term with high protein diets. Although science has shown that 20 to 30 grams of protein is the maximum that will be used up in protein synthesis for the muscle, at least in the immediate time after eating, the amount you eat should ideally be greater, as not all of it reaches the muscle anyway, and not all of it is guaranteed to participate in protein synthesis, and this has to do with many factors such as age, digestive efficiency, metabolic efficiency, etc. For example, most men over 40 have initial stages of anabolic resistance and need about 50 grams of protein per meal, whilst younger people may only need, for example, 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal. So I do hope you have enjoyed watching this video on optimizing your protein intake by Jerry and I from our interview. And if you have enjoyed watching the video, please give the video a like, subscribe to this channel and Jerry's too for more content like this, and click the bell button to be notified of future videos. And don't forget, of course, to leave your comments in the comment section. Also, make sure to subscribe to Applied Metabolics newsletter by Jerry Brainum if you do wish to enhance your knowledge on bodybuilding nutrition, especially as a natural lifter. For more information, just look at the description below. If you're interested in learning more about natural bodybuilding, hit me up for online coaching at www.goldenerabookworm.com, and also check out my website for ebooks on Golden Era training. That's it from me. This is the Golden Era Bookworm saying bye for now.
As a natural bodybuilder, it is imperative to know your own testosterone levels, as they are a reflection of the anabolic environment created by your diet and training. I would highly recommend using the male hormone test kit from Let's Get Checked, and make sure you use my code GOLDEN30 for a 30% discount. Again, the advantage of checking yourself regularly is that you will know how well your body is anabolically primed to put on the much desired muscle you are working for. Now, if you're interested in learning more about Vince Gironda's approach to bodybuilding, his principles, and all these tips of wisdom that he has, I mean, there's so much stuff that probably hasn't been proven by science, and it will take science to prove or disprove Vince. But to be honest, these 3 books, I believe, which I call the Classic Physique Bundle, are the best books that Vince ever came out with. And they, of course, are the Wild Physique, the Master Series, and the Pro Series. Have a look at it this way. The Wild Physique, I believe, is like the ABCs of Vince Gironda's principles to bodybuilding. He teaches you the exercises and his principles. But how do you put them together? Well, the Master Series is a 14-month program of using all of these principles, all of the diets that Vince came out with, all of the exercises. And believe me, it's a brilliant, brilliant program. Many people have used it. I know personally a lot of bodybuilders that have actually used it and made fantastic results with it. And of course, the Pro Series was a book that he came out with later on, specially targeted for getting into competition. It's just these 3 books, as I call it, the Classic Physique Bundle, Vince's best work, and available, of course, at www.goldenerabookworm.com. Now, the Pro Series of Bodybuilding, which was targeted for professional bodybuilders, contains 6 programs, each of which go for 2 months each. So it's a whole year, again, in preparation for competition. Online training is now available, including my new program, Novice to Classic, a program geared towards beginners and novices looking at developing a classic physique, as well as Classic Cut, geared at those who wish to lose weight and gain muscle fast. Details available at www.goldenerabookworm.com. Need a bodybuilding poster for your gym or office? Then check out Iron Man Magazine archive.smugmug.com for the highest quality posters on the planet. Scroll through the galleries of all the legends, including greats such as Arnold, Frank Zane, Sergio Oliva, Serge Nubret, Tom Platz, and Larry Scott, and much, much more, and select your poster now. To support your favorite YouTube channel, please visit teespring.com/store/goldenerabookworm for merchandise, including t-shirts, hoodies, face masks, phone cases, and much, much more. Once again at teespring.com/store/goldenerabookworm. Become a patron at www.patreon.com/goldenerabookworm for hard to find books, scans of rare photos, and articles on the golden era of bodybuilding.
I don't think that Bill Phillips looked at it as, I want to compete against them. I want to destroy them.
If they pass legislation basically making any type of food supplement a prescription item, that would be the end, the death of the entire food supplement industry.
Take your vitamin pill now.
In the 1960s, the sports supplement industry was barely emerging.
I think the reason why Joe Weider was so successful was he had Arnold on his side.
He wasn't selling supplements. He was in the dream business.
Joe Weider was a marketing genius.
People would say the promotions or the endorsements back then were cheesy. To me, it wasn't. I loved it.
Fitness was taking off. You know, fitness became cool. You had a lot of readers that wanted to be like the stars that they idolized.
Bill's strength is his marketing savvy. He's a marketing genius.
Got it. It's only vitamin.
The right of American citizens to have free access to dietary supplements of their choice.
Consult your physician. You might as well consult the next guy you meet on the street. They don't know a damn thing about vitamins and nutrition.
The dietary supplement industry became the #2 most regulated industry. Nuclear, dietary supplements, pharmaceutical. We're more regulated than drugs.
They come in and you need to allow the FDA. They have jurisdiction.
The enforcement is kind of the questionable side of it, and how do they really get a handle on this monster?
A lot of people tell me that the dietary supplement industry is completely unregulated. It's the wild, wild west out there. It's a free-for-all. That could not be further from the truth.
A dietary supplement is not allowed to have a side effect. I always say the pharmaceutical has to have a minimum of 100 side effects in order for it to be a drug.
And now, it's a $40 billion industry and growing.
That's the really interesting thing, is the cast of characters from the 80s, when it was kind of iffy, to now when it's a lot more legitimate.
They made it sound cutting edge, revolutionary, and different, and I want that. That's cool.
We are in this industry to improve our health. It's not just a vanity project here. We're working on our lifeline. We eat a certain way to improve our health. We train a certain way to improve our health. Supplements are just that. They supplement your work, your graft, your nutrition.
They demonize dietary supplements, but they say all you need is real food. Well, what's a real food?
They pump you up and get you hard, stronger, faster, bigger.
Doc, I want to take this weight gain. I want to take this pre-workout. No way. That stuff, we don't know what's in that. It could be, no way. I'm not going to give you, it's going to kill the industry, bottom line.
So I must have drank so much protein powder from age 15 to 18 that my head was going to explode.
I believed in metrics so much that I would probably punch somebody in the face if they tried to take it away from me.